Hello, welcome to the very first Cricket Strength members only webinar series. Okay, this is going to be just for you guys. As members, we want to bring you the best content that no one else is going to get. So this will just be in the members only area just for you. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is the strength speed training and where you sit in it. It's quite similar to the stuff that Steph talks about with bowling. When he gets a bowler down and they're looking to see what type of bowler there is, he'll look and see if he's got a quick arm or a grunter, basically. And it's similar with training. We want to know if you're a fast twitch animal or more a strength athlete. And when we know that, we can get your training right accordingly. So let's dive in. Like I said, we talk a lot about finding out what bowling type you are, but it definitely applies to training. Maybe not even more so, it's probably the same as, but we really need to know where you are so that we can get the training right for you. And it's knowing where you sit on the force velocity curve. It can help so much with getting the most from your training. Like everyone always wants, and that's why we sort of started really, to give you guys the best knowledge and the best chance of your training helping your game. And when we know this, it helps even more. And like we do with everything, we want to make it as individual as possible. So the guys or you on the membership program can have 20 different types of athlete. And that's what we've got to deal with at the club. When they come in, everyone's a little bit different. So with training, we want to make it as individual as possible. And it's particularly important when we do get to the sort of special strength work, which we talk about a lot, and the specifics, then we really can dial down. Just like with the weighted balls, where we need to know if you're a static or spring bowler, and then we know if we need to use more the underweight or the overweight. It's the same with training, same sort of philosophy. So what does it look like? This is the basic sort of from one end to the other, what we need. And this is a capture from some of our academy lads. So we look to say, where are they and where do they sit on the curve? So what do they need? So basically we almost got two ends and the middle, which is very simplified, but that's where we're going to start with. We don't need to go too much in depth onto the science behind it, but we want to bring you, the basics so you know what it looks like. So on the left-hand side here, we've got fast movements and light load. And on the other side, we've got low velocity, high loads. Okay. So that's where we've got 3 players one end, 4 players the other, and then 3 are sort of sitting in the middle a little bit. So that's how we almost classify each player for where they are. So how do we determine where you sit on that graph? The very simplest way is to find out and understand what your EUR is, okay? Sounds complicated, but it's really not. EUR is basically the eccentric utilization ratio. So it's the ability to use your eccentric phase. So put it in basic layman's terms. What we do is we've got 2 basic jumps, which we bring in and use, and we can do this with pretty much anyone. And I'll explain how to do it in a little bit. But we've got a counter movement jump, which is from standing, quick down and driving up. And we've got a squat jump, which is where you squat down, hold, and then jump. Okay. So the counter movement jump's different when that you've got that eccentric phase of coming quickly down to explode up. If you think of the spring or the elastic band, we're dragging the elastic band back to then let it go. Whereas doing a squat jump is almost like just letting go. Okay, so we're not having that almost pre-pull, the coil to then go. It's just stood and you're jumping. And again, knowing where you are has massive knock-on effects to your training. So the implications we can have here, not understanding and adapting your training can severely impede your adaptation potential. This is huge, absolutely huge, really, because if we've got a guy who grunts the ball down and we need to get him quicker, but we just stick to strength, then we're going to be actually making them slower. Okay. So they could be, and it happens a lot. The amount of emails we get with St. Juicy stuff, I've been doing stuff all winter, I'm strong. Everyone told me I need to get strong, but I'm not getting any quicker. If you're already strong and you keep getting stronger, that's not going to be the defining point for you. Okay. Your limiting factor is not strength. If we look at bowlers, if we look at Tamel Mills, I remember a few years ago he came to Worcester because we were trying to sign him, and we did a little bit of a fitness test on him, and just to see where he was. Now, that lad was so strong, but he could hardly move. I had him sat up and just trying to do some basic thoracic rotations, upper back rotations, could hardly go anywhere. So I explained to him his limit in potential was not going to be strength. He didn't need really to do any more strength work, just maintain it fine. But everything else for him would have been about movement. And I was absolutely gutted when he didn't come here. And then he obviously went to another club who, from what we were hearing, just kept doing strength with him. 6 months later, back flared up, and that was him done with anything other than 20 over cricket. So, obviously we've got implications on your game, but also injuries and actually playing the game. We all want to play as long as we can, as comfortably as we can. So we don't want to get the injuries. We don't want to be hampered by back stuff and things like that. So this has massive implications all the way around. Like we said, you could be making yourself an absolutely slower bowler, slower in the field, and you're confused, like, well, hang on, I'm doing all this strength work and it's not quite working. So the next point, we want to be able to transfer your trainer to your game. Again, so big. I'll show you in a little bit 2 different programs that we use with the academy, and 60-70% of them are very similar, but they're just tiny little changes which can have massive impacts. Again, everything we're doing hopefully should be impacting your game. If it's not, we got to question it. Why are we doing it like this? It needs to impact your game. Otherwise, is it an S&C or coach's ego that you're doing things for? If it is, we're struggling. And again, it's similar to understanding when you need to work with the OU balls, heavy or light. So what training do we need to do? Do we need to do ballistic or do we need to do strength? What's your limiting factor? So all the time, there's similar themes all throughout here. We want to know exactly where we are. So the fast movement, light load type of exercises. So we've got the counter movement jump, we've got the depth jump, we've got the medieval throws, we've got the squat deadlift jump. I mean, in here you could be putting the Olympic lifts, but we talk about the Olympic lifts. And for us, getting the medieval throws right is a much better bang for your buck than the Olympic lifts. But if someone's doing hang cleans and hang snatches and things like that and feels good, go for it. If you've got the technique, if your hip hinge is fine, if you're strong enough, happy days. But these sort of things to work on first are a lot more basic and a lot more easy for everyone to get right and limit injuries. So we'll have a little look at a few. So this is a basic depth jump. So very easy. I don't know if you can hear the music. So this was obviously about Christmas time. I'll be turning that down. So if we have a little look again. So basically you're falling off. As soon as we're landing, we're then springing up. What we don't want is to land and really bend the knees and come right down. So again, that stretch shortening cycle, we're trying to make the most of. When you land the second time, and then we're coming into a quarter squat. But the first time, you're just dropping off, bang straight up and down. Again, a very simple one we can bring in quite early. So if we go on to the next one, now we're looking at a jump into a medieval throw. So this one, kneeling jump, again, it's fairly simple. We dip down the backside into a hip hinge, drive the legs up. We've got the medieval in front, and then we're into the little bound and medieval throw. Again, very simple, minimal equipment, but very ballistic, very quick. You might have to take time to work up to this, but when you get it, a great little activation. I get a medieval throw here. Make sure that's off. So a hop in, back foot, 2 hops, then brace that front leg, hip pre-turn, and the ball comes through. But again, ballistic. Obviously on here, what we rather have do is that back foot keep in contact and drag along the floor rather than coming up, because we don't want to be bowling, we don't want to be throwing off one foot. But apart from that, we can see it's fairly ballistic. It's high velocity, low load. And a very simple skater jump, side to side. These are going to become a lot more popular, okay? They come from baseball. A lot of the baseball pitchers use them, and there's coming some very good data with using these and increasing pitching speed. So it's just basically jumping from left to right, but dipping in and pushing back, okay? So you notice here, he's not just haphazard. He's down, he's landing, then he's pushing to go again. So what we don't want is to lack control. You can see here, He's got great control on those glutes and able to push off left to right. Again, fast movement, low load. So now the other side of it, so we've got low velocity, low speed, and heavy loads. So we've got things like the hex bar deadlifts, the Bulgarian split squats, eccentric row, hip thrusts, the more strength type of things. So you guys who are typically on this, if we're thinking of bowlers, someone like a Jimmy Anderson maybe, who's very springy, but he's got a whippy arm, but his strength might be his limiting factor. Someone like Stuart Broad as well, possibly. And so then you can help build the strength, and when you've got the strength as well as the fast twitch fibers, and then we're on for some very, very good gains. So if we look at a few of these exercises, we've got a Bulgarian split, again, one of my favorite ones here for unilateral leg strength. I really love that, for bowlers, they are absolutely huge. The beauty of this one as well is we're getting great mobility through the hips. As you sink down, make sure the body's lined up with that back knee so we're not bending at the hips. The gym was an absolute state then as well. Front squat. Again, we talk about the squat and I'm not massive fans. If we're going to do a variation, I like the front squat or the goblet squat. So we'll have a little look at this one. Again, the beauty here, the load isn't going directly through the spine. We're able to keep that nice spinal pattern. We're not going into extension, which happens with back squats. So again, this can be a bit of a primer, a bit of activation, or with a few lads when the patterns are good enough, we can load it. Also, it will show us any shoulder mobility issues, okay, and around the hips, around the wrists as well. So it's quite a good one, that one, just to see what's actually going on in the body. Now the hip hinge, the RDL, another beautiful one. So we're making sure that the hip hinge is right, the bar is staying close to the body, knees aren't going anywhere, and we can build that posterior chain. And the hip thrust, okay? So we're just listening as I talk through the hip thrust, but again, probably my favorite bilateral lower body exercise. So yeah, I absolutely adore that exercise. Our boys can work up heavy loads of about, some of them getting up 250, 260 kgs. So it's really unbelievable for the glutes, for the posterior chain, for everything really. I love it. For me, if you're going to go to one exercise for fast bowlers to build the bilateral strength, you go to this bad boy. You can do it in different variations you've probably seen before. We've done with the bands, the band across the hips or bands on the knee to activate those glutes even more. It's awesome. I love it. But, it's not as sort of straightforward as we're saying. And nothing's quite as straightforward as you definitely see it here or you definitely see it there. Like we talk about, some people sit in the middle. There's some people are 70% one way, some 30% the other. So you always sort of need to know roughly where you are and tweak it as you go. Because once you're getting the gains, and then if the strength is coming on, then we can go a little bit more ballistic. And likewise, when the ballistic's coming on, well, we can add strength, and we can work both in the same thing. So, like we're saying here, the one thing we can bear in mind is that most, in the early phase of your training, you will lack strength, okay? So it'd be the case of weighting the program correctly. Some of you might be 60-40 in the speed strength, whereas others might be 30-70 speed strength. So, it depends on where you are, the sort of dose response you get from the exercise. But all it does is gives us an initial idea of where your limiting factor is. So when we know that, then we can start putting it right. So here's two different examples. Okay, these are two academy kids. One's on the speed strength, one's on more strength speed. Now, if you look, the start of the training, their sessions, that they've both got their hip scoop mediball toss. They're both doing a single arm shot put. They're both doing a double Hobson medicine ball. Okay, so these things we're starting off the session with, they don't need to change. They're both fast bowlers. They both want the mediball work. But where we change them is what we go into next, okay? So for the strength speed, he's doing a front plate squat and just focusing on that. Whereas the speed strength, he's doing a front plate squat and supersetting him with lateral hops into another mediball throw. So we're giving him a little bit more of the high velocity, low work that he needs, okay? Whereas the other guy just does a squat and front plate squat, or we could then go goblet squat, or maybe front squat if his movements are good enough, or something like that. Then we move into another superset. Now we've got the one guy doing Bulgarian EQI holds, which is isometric holds, which again, massive for fast bowlers. They're both doing that. But then one supersetting it with the step up knee drive jumps, the other supersetting it with walking lunges, okay, with the hip lock. So again, we need dose response. What does he need and what does the other one need? Make sure we're getting what you need. And then they're finishing off the same as well. So they're both doing RDLs to get that hip hinge of fast bowler is huge. Iron cross, a little bit of a anti-rotational trunk, and some kneeling pal-off perturbations. Again, some anti-rotation trunk. So it's not hugely different, Again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. What do we need as fast bowlers? We need that medicine ball work so we can work on the mechanics without thinking about the mechanics. We can think about the foot placement. We can think about the hip pre-turn. We can think about getting through and get that back foot driving through in a braced front leg. So we always want that. We always want to be working on that. We always want to be working on anterior trunk movement, okay, anti-rotation. We always want to be working on that as well. So, but then in the middle is where we can play with it. And they're not massively different. We're just, a couple of things that just changed to suit one and suit the other. Because like we say, at an early stage, strength isn't going to be there. So we want to try and slowly build that strength into the good movement patterns. Remember, first up, they will be getting the movement pattern sorted before they move into strength. So this is where you've got that sorted, then we can move in. But it's a whole evolutionary process, okay? Wherever you are, that's where you need to be training. You don't want to jump 5 ahead or 6 back. We want to be where you are and making sure we're making the most of it. So there we go with that one. In closing thoughts, we need to find out where you sit. Make exercises relevant to you. Remember, individual based. We always want to be individual based. Make sure this is your training and your bowling. Okay? So not one or the other. Make sure you know what type of bowler you are, what type of trainer you are. Make it specific, usable, always. So if you haven't got access to a jump machine, very simple things you can do by a wall is do a counter movement jump, see how high you can touch. Okay, make a little mark, and then do a squat jump. So we're squatting down and then jumping up, see how high you can touch there. If the squat jump is higher than the counter movement, then you need to be working on your EUI, you need to be working on the high velocity, low load. If it's the other way around, you're going to be more the other side where you'd be working probably more in strength. Okay, so that's us done here. Any questions, hit us up and we will get back to you. Okay, cheers. See you next time.